when you're in a working class environment, the notion that we're all in this together is very much present. You see it with your friends, not just your family, you see it with your friends. And so you start this book learning, you start going to the library. Well, people say, in my neighborhood in Brooklyn, say, this guy thinks who he is. You know, like, who do you think you are? Are you better than me? Okay. And that's a big pressure. You're not taught to toot your own horn. You're not taught, I mean, you know, middle-class kids, they learn right away how to write their college essays. You know, they're practicing that in high school, before high school, talking about their accomplishments. Well, that doesn't happen in a working-class home, and you are. I don't know if you're taught modesty, but you're taught a certain decorum that one doesn't brag, one doesn't call attention to oneself in that regard.
You may not feel modest inside, but you certainly never permit it to show.
Right.
Yeah.
I mean, obviously people have pride, people and I'm not saying there aren't immodest working class people, that's silly, but I'm just talking as a general rule. When you take that same person, move into the middle class in a corporate environment where, you know, nobody's going to hear from you if you don't say, well, you know, business is up because I did this, and here I accomplished that, and on and on. You have to do it in a subtle way. You can't do it in the old neighborhood way. There's one guy I interviewed in the book who said that he learned how to be silent. As a working class person, he talked too much. Maybe he was too nervous, kind of too jittery. He learned to be silent, and therefore he became a mystery. And as a mystery, he was someone to be listened to when he did finally speak. Little strategies that he learned.
How does one subtly, you talk about subtly bragging, or subtly claiming the credit, or tooting one's own horn. How do people do that?
You can slyly say that, well, it was a tough, it was tough to put that
quarter,
together.
but we more than made our numbers.
Yeah, exactly. And I don't know. I guess it was those 7 nights I spent here till 10 o'clock working, and on and on. It's silly.
You know, it's not only a working class problem, but from what I read, Alfred, it's a woman's problem too, because women are trained to be modest and self-effacing, and they pay for that heavily in the business world, because loudmouth guys are where it's at. It's sad to say in the business world, or subtly loudmouth guys, call it what one will. So women, as well as working class people, seem to suffer from that particular thing. Now, one thing that women don't suffer from, and that you have alluded to here a little bit, but you talk about a lot in the book, is the emphasis on physical toughness, and the converse emphasis, even if you are physically tough, you will suffer if you're a bookish person.
Right. As a working class person, there are certain attributes that are prized. If you're physically strong, you know, because I mean, let's face it, I was in a lot of fights growing up. A lot of the working class kids I talked to were in a lot of fights. You're not growing up in the nicest of areas. You're not dealing with people who can settle things amicably. So you do grow up tough, and so I mean, I always lifted weights. I always did these kinds of things that I thought were macho, because it's sort of part of that culture.
You know, if I may interject something, you say in the book that you still walk into a room and silently to yourself you're wondering whether you can take somebody. That's part of what one grows up with.
Yeah, no, absolutely. It's a sort of kind of a survival mechanism.
Yeah.
And yeah, to this day, I know in my office who I can pretty much, deal with. Not that I should come to that, but again, that is the problem, because okay, so now part of who you are is there's this physicality. Part of who you are, there's this sense that you get a lot of things done with your physical presence. I interviewed my father-in-law, who's kind of an interesting guy. He was an assembly line worker in Boston, and he went to Harvard at night. And then he became an executive. He was a very tough guy, tattoos and kind of gruff Boston accent, but an extraordinarily bright, artistic person. But he learned that he could use his physicality to advantage in a middle class environment by just standing close, moving in close to somebody, and saying it in as polite a way as he could muster, but getting in your space. You know, that's a little bit unnerving. I'm not saying I do that.
No,
but
that's a class-based thing. It's
yeah.
also a race-based thing.
Yeah. So I have a street brawler's temperament, but I have an Ivy League kind of governor to keep that in check, because it really doesn't do good to smash class.
Yeah, understood. Understood.
This excerpt is brought to you by the Massachusetts School of Law, the leader of reform in legal education and a leader in multimedia education for the public. To view the full interview and for a full listing of MSL's programs, log on to mslaw.edu.